Well, welcome to the Nitty Gritty. So yeah, we've got Jimmy Rex. I think everybody knows Jimmy Rex.
Everyone should know Jimmy by now.
You don't know Jimmy Rex, Brent? Oh, you better.
Are we
Listen.
live? Is this part of the podcast?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Come on.
Going.
You know, if we say something stupid, we can edit it, but we hardly ever edit. Like I called our guest 2 shows ago the wrong name, and we just kept it.
dude, I had one of my
stupid.
podcasts I had a guest on, and I went for 5 minutes before I realized I wasn't recording, and he was like into his life story. But I actually I just subtly just hit play or record, and then I went back, and his name's Rob. But thankfully, I had another Rob on before him, and I was able to use the other Rob's intro. I know it sounds bad, but you can't tell, and it totally worked. So don't judge me.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I was thinking on your feet, man.
Dude, I was so embarrassed, and I know him, but not well enough to be like, oh, you know what?
You need to do that again.
I forgot to hit record.
Yeah, you don't want to say that. Huh?
No, it's bad.
So, real estate extraordinaire, world traveler, my buddy at the BYU games. That's usually where we bump into each other.
Yep.
BYU football games. I call him the king of Lake Powell. That's just me. I don't know. I think you're probably most well known. I mean, that video of you driving the houseboat, sinking.
I saved it from singing.
You saved. You're right.
Yeah.
You kept up the speed.
People always make that mistake. They're like, oh, I saw you sink in the houseboat. I'm like, no, the boat was sinking. I saved it from sinking.
Calm and collected.
Look,
too.
I'm still not sure if I saved it from sinking or caused it to sink. Bottom line is I just took it out last week with my family. That thing still exists.
Wow.
The same boat?
Yeah, we saved it. Little deductible from the insurance
Wow.
company. We're back on the lake, dude.
You know, if I was picking out a real estate agent, I watched that video, and I mean, this cool as a cucumber, and the boat is sinking.
Thank you. You
I
need
mean,
a captain of your
that's
real
what-
estate deal that's not going to
what I'm-
panic when the
that's what I'm
appraiser
saying.
says that we're $8,000
I
low.
mean,
You
I
know?
would be freaking out. And so, yeah, that was.
You know, I
that's
grew up
the
with a
first thing that I
father, and
noticed.
I love my dad, but he would freak out whenever anything went wrong.
Right.
And I had a mentor. True story. It was a guy that I used to sell meat with. His name was Herman Hagen. He was from the Netherlands, 6'5", huge.
Right.
And we thought we'd play this funny prank one time, and because keep in mind, I grew up where if something went wrong, it was we didn't even want to go on vacations because all hell would break loose. Dad would lose it, and
That's my dad.
throwing stuff. And anyway, and so we had a van when I had my meat company, and we had we'd made it wrapped it so it looked like all these cows were hanging their arms out the window. It was pretty cool. And but on the back door didn't lock. And one night it was 10 p.m. I was with one of my buddies who's a pretty big dude. And we're like, oh, let's play a prank on my partner. He's driving the van. We knew it was him because it was wrapped with cows. And I said, I know the back door doesn't lock. Let's sneak in. And then he starts driving. You'll sit up and just scare him. That's a good prank, right? Somebody's in your back seat. It's everyone's worst nightmare. So we do it. And homeboy starts driving. And he goes for 5 minutes. He's not looking. So I'm to get his attention.
Are you both in the van?
Yeah. I'm laying down, though, and he's sitting up.
Okay.
And my buddy's he's 3 rows back. So it's physically couldn't get to him without me standing up and being like, hey, it's a prank, And and finally, the dude slams on the brakes, and he looks. And my buddy's just sitting there in the back seat. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, this is going to be great. And he just sits there. It felt like an hour. It was probably 8 seconds. And it was the longest 8 seconds of my life. And I finally sit up. I'm like, Herman, it's a joke. It's me. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, Herman, how were you not scared by that? That was supposed to terrify you. He goes, Jimmy, when something is wrong in life, he's from the Netherlands. He got this weird accent, and he's like, people make the mistake. They panic. They do bad decision. I think, how do I get out of this? And I'm like, that is some ninja stuff right there, dude. And so literally anytime something goes wrong in my life, I try to think all right, well, what would a ninja do? What would Herman do? And it didn't do any good to panic with the houseboat sinking. So I just had fun with it.
How did it happen?
They really don't know. It was there was a really choppy day with the water. Water kept coming over the top, and we didn't even have that many people on the boat. Usually, we have more than that. And but the water kept coming, so we were bailing it out. JD Falsov, he's used to play at BOU, was bailing all the water off the front, and my buddy Aaron, and it just wasn't going. And then all of a sudden, one of those wave boat hits us, and we were just all water started going from the front. There's a thing in the front, the sled that kind of holds the anchors and stuff, and that filled up, and then that started funneling into the bedroom, and it was game over.
Wow. That was crazy. How far did you have to drive? Like how far
It's about
did
an
you
hour
guys-
20. It's not bad. We were in Navajo Canyon. If you're familiar with Lake Powell, we had to get to Antelope Point. But yeah, we have over. I mean, it's got over 40 million views now. It went viral pretty quick.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I mean, I clicked on that story not even knowing it was you. You know, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's Jimmy. Oh my gosh, that's Jimmy. And so, yeah, that was a crazy video.
It's a good time.
How many times do you go to Lake Powell every year? Because that seems to be your spot.
Yeah, I mean, I've just in my business, I've met the thing I love about Lake Powell is you're away from your phones, you're connecting, you truly are getting to know people, and so for me, it's like it's a thing I do to build relationships. It's all about that, and so this year I went 4 times. But I don't go for a week each time. Like I'll go for 2 or 3 days and come back, and
It seems like you mix it up. Like you take a lot of different people.
I do,
which
yeah.
is
So
pretty
like
cool.
I'll go on couples trips. just got back from my family trip. We do a couple singles trips every year. But yeah, it's always different people. And I mean, people think we're like making it up, but you come back from that and you feel like you're best friends.
Right.
Like I traced all my real estate deals one time from like where I met the person, and I kid you not, like over 40% of them I met the person in Lake Powell. Like that's where we became friends. I just closed the biggest sell in the history of Utah. It's a $32 million house.
Yeah,
up
we
in,
wanted to talk about that. That's insane.
you know what? It's nice to throw out there. It was a good deal. Okay,
Nice to
worked
just
hard for
dangle out
that.
there a little
Gives
bit.
every other agent something to beat now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Set
no.
a
My
new
buddy,
bar.
my buddy works for Century 21. He goes, dude, it's been about 3 days since word broke in the office of what you did, and you've taken souls. But here's the funny part though, is like my buddy basically put my name on the deal. He did it himself. It was a guy I met in Lake Powell, my buddy Trevor, who owns Nikola Motors. He just was on the cover of Forbes last year as the newest billionaire.
Right.
And it's so funny. He told me when we did the deal, I mean, it was more money on that one deal than I made in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 combined, to give you an idea. And he goes, dude, you didn't earn this commission on this deal. I could have done this without you. He goes, you
100%.
earned this for your friendship the last 10 years. But like I met that guy in Lake Powell. Like that's where we became homies. And then we went on a vacation to Hawaii for his birthday. That's where we really became tight, right? I have all these friendships. I mean, I got one buddy, Tyler Bennett. You know Tyler. Met him in Lake Powell. We've probably between us now done 400 or 500 deals. Like he works on my real estate team. We work together now as, he's my investment specialist.
Right.
So, but I met that dude in Lake Powell. Like, so when I go down there, it's not that I'm going to play all the time.
Sure.
I'm just building relationships and friendships, and it's a great way to do it. It's, the most beautiful place on earth.
So how have you been able to establish like such a good connection? Like you're intentional in kind of how you do it. You're getting away from the cell phones. You're kind of getting out. So how have you been able though to establish? Because I know a lot of people try that. A lot of people try to do trips and they try to do these types of marketing events. How have you been successful in kind of creating that type of connection to where a friend is okay with you making multiple 6 figures on one deal?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we come from the heart. Me and my friends, like, I know it sounds lame, but we always end last night, my buddy invited me over for dinner with his family. He stops dinner. He invited me and my other buddy, my buddy Travis and his wife Jenny. This is my buddy Hassan. This guy's from Egypt. I met him as a for sale by owner 10 years ago.
He sells cars, right?
Yeah, he owns 24
I
Motors.
went to
He's
Costa
the best guy
Rica
in the
with
world.
him. He's awesome.
He's amazing. So I met this guy selling his house, okay? And we became close friends. Well, we're sitting there at dinner last night, and he stops. He says, I need to tell you guys a story about Uncle Jimmy. And he
Uncle
starts
Jimmy.
telling this story, and he's like, and he goes, just so you know, he is part of family now. He is, you guys, and it was like, it was just such a touching moment. And I started thinking like, all of our friends, like my friends, we have these relationships where we legit do whatever we can for the other person. We have a true love, and we aren't afraid to share it. Like every one of us left there saying, I love you, like to my buddy and, my buddy and his wife. And that's how all my friendships kind of have been formed. And too often people, they need something from you or they want something from you and they can't get out of their own way.
Right.
I truly do, like everything I do it with the intention of like, I need nothing from this. And people feel whether it's genuine or whether it's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do everything expecting nothing. And it honestly, like worst case scenario, it's going to create a very beautiful life that you live in, and you'll have a lot of friendships and relationships form that way. So even in Lake Powell, it's the same thing. I mean, I don't have an expectation. I'm not trying to get anything. I don't let them talk about real estate. Like if they want to bring it up, hey, let's talk about when we're back. Let's just have a good time, and it's sincere. Like that's what I want them to get. And so that's the experience that they have.
So you hear a lot of people talk about like the human, whether it's the brain or the heart, can only handle like 100 to 150 relationships.
I've heard 200, yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different numbers, right? You've obviously been able to do things a little bit differently with that, with your trips, right? How do you maintain them though? Because you can go and connect and you can create a relationship with somebody. For me, the difficult thing I find is like maintaining those. Like I can go and have, like I was in last week, I had a little retreat for like a coaching retreat that I'm a part of, really great relationships, but man, it's really hard to maintain those.
Yeah, and so I mean, I've heard that number. I think it's somewhat accurate, but here's the thing: is I picked a perfect career for me. My job is literally to stay in touch with as many people as possible. So while the normal person has to go work for 8 or 10 hours a day, my job's to go connect for 8 to 10 hours a day. So those hours where you normally would, either have to spend it with your family or with work, I am spending it building bonds and relationships. And so for me, that is one huge advantage. But then, you use the word intentional. I'm just very intentional about it. I put scenarios and situations together for people to get together. So like 2 weeks ago, I did a cabin trip for 15 friends. I brought all these people together. My sister and her husband even came. And it was funny. My sister started crying at one point. I'm like, why are you crying? And she's like, I had no idea you guys love each other so much. Like, you always hoped that my brother had good friends. I knew they were all successful, but like you guys, like this new girl walked into the room, her and her husband, and everyone got up and greeted her. That's just normal for us, right? And she's like, I've never seen people greet someone like that when they walk in. Like, how good would that feel to know that you're loved like that? And I was just like, oh, like it's normal to me. Like, that's just what we do. And so, the weekend before that, we all went to Lake Powell, 35 of us. A couple weeks before that, I threw a big party for my clients where I had, 5,000 people ended up showing up with the fireworks show and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm just always trying to create scenarios. I'm doing a gala on November 30th, the Black Tie Gala. I do this every year. I'll have several hundred of my best friends there. And, we're doing it for charity. So you're working with a cause together. And when you're doing things together too, you form a bond. Like, it's not like we need each other. We don't need to see each other every day. You can't see 200 people a week, right? But they know I'm there. I know they're there. And that's kind of that trust and that bond that's formed there, that friendship.
Where did this come from? I mean, growing up, did you have examples of this in your parents, or like talk about maybe growing up a little bit, like where some of this came from?
Yeah, so I studied it, to be honest with you. I growing up, I was a very observant little kid. I noticed, like, if my friends threw a party, like in high school even, for example, right? Like we didn't have any money in high school, but I noticed, like, if you go to a party, nobody cares. If you throw a party, everybody wants to know the guy that threw the party. Everybody's kind of a little bit more connected to him and everything else, especially...
Jason Edwards said he wants to hire party throwers, not party goers.
Right.
That was the line he used.
Yeah, it's a good line.
Yeah.
Well, and I also, like, all my friends were charging for these parties. And I'm like, what if I just do them for free? Like, and just build connections. And so I had a meat business, right? We were selling steak and chicken door to door at 20.
In high school?
In college.
Okay.
21, 22.
Got it.
23. And I would throw these steak parties. So here's the thing. It was like when we'd meet girls at college, right? Like, well, if you ask a girl out in class or whatever, you're already coming from a disadvantage. She knows you're interested. So what we did is I'd throw a steak party every other week. We'd serve 200 steaks. This is where I got all my employees from. Like, all the people like, who the hell serves steak? So they were like, go talk to Jimmy. And so I got all my sales guys from throwing these steak parties. We had all these beautiful girls and all these cool guys. And then we'd invite people from our class that we were interested in. So there was about 5 of us. We'd be like, hey, we're throwing a barbecue. You should come. Totally chill. All of a sudden she shows up and, wow, these guys are fun and cool and doing things. And you come from a place of leverage as opposed from like this place of...
He was already closing deals, man. See,
But
it's
like,
the same
but like
thing as
there,
real estate.
Where'd that come from, though? Like, how did you think to do that at 21 years old?
I don't know. I guess instinct.
Was your dad an entrepreneur?
No, my dad did real estate, and then he sold truck insurance. My dad was a really good people person, but he not really. Like, he had his close group of friends, and that was about it. I just always was watching. I'm a very curious person. Like, I took a test once that said, "What's your number one motivation in life?" And mine's curiosity. And I'm driven by curiosity. I love to know. That's why I've been to over 60 countries now. I want to know why people are wired the way they do. I read 50 to 100 books a year. I really want to know what makes people tick. So I hired a real estate coach when I didn't have the money to do it in 2005. I hired a life coach in 2010. I've had one ever since. You guys will like this. There's a book out there about how to be attractive. So it's kind of what you're asking. How do you learn these things, right? And I'm always reading books about human behavior. So like I read this one, it's called The Game. It's by Neil Strauss, and it's all about how to be attractive to the opposite sex. And I was reading the book, and it was like, dang, this this is interesting stuff. I'd never thought about a lot of these concepts. And I was like, I'm going to call the guys and just see what their story is. So I looked him up on Twitter. The guy had like 4,000 followers, the guy that the book's about. I just flew out. We hung out for like a week. We hit it off. His girlfriend loved me because I was the only normal friend this guy had. And then she came to Sundance with him for a week. And I was just like, human behavior, he was an expert on human behavior. He was so good at reading anyone in the room. He taught me a lot of things that like, just the right way to show up. Like the whole thing of like, don't be needy, like come from abundance. If you're a king in a room, you're not going around like trying to get something from everybody else. You be the king, build a fire, let people come get warm, right? Like those kind of concepts and ideas where I started going like, oh yeah, I just need to like create value everywhere I go. And so I'm the first guy to connect to my friends all the time. Like most of my friends met through me in some way or another. And I love that because they all know that I don't have to get anything for that, right? Like an example I see where people screw up, they'll call me and they have a real estate referral. And they're like, hey man, would you be able to like, cut me a 25% referral if like, since I sent you my mom? And I'm like, well, no, legally I can't do that. Yeah, but you can like figure, and I'm like, why not just have me owe you one? Why not just do me the favor because you're trying to like show that you're creating value, right? And so that's an example that I see all the time where people screw that up. There's so many little things you can do. Like another one, people always will post on Facebook, hey, does anybody know somebody that blah, blah, blah. If I see that, I'll take the 90 seconds it takes to Google it and find something, or I'll think of one of my friends that actually fills that role and I'll just hurry and I'll connect them. So my friends all the time are like getting connected by me, just doing little things. You see it all the time. Most people you skip over it, right? Does anybody know a chiropractor up in Salt Lake?
Right.
And I'll just like, oh, I got a buddy's chiropractor. Here, past client of mine. Here, call this guy. And it takes me 90 seconds. But then my chiropractor buddy's like, wow, Jimmy, thanks so much. And then all of a sudden my buddy's like, yeah, Jimmy has all the, like people call me for the weirdest stuff because they know I'll figure out an answer. And half the time I'm just Googling it anyway,
Have you read The Go-Giver?
Yeah, I actually interviewed Bob Berg on my podcast.
He's coming on October with us.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So you're like Gus, the connector.
You just connect good people, man. Like that's all I try. It's just like I was talking about at the BYU at the sideline. I had sideline passes the other day, and it meant more to me to get my buddy down there. So I actually left the BYU USC game at the end of the third quarter because I wanted to hook my buddy up. He's a diehard college football fan. He actually runs a college football website. He'd never been on the field, so I would have stayed, of course, but I gave him my pass so that he could then experience fourth quarter. I mean, I didn't know I was going to go to overtime, and then he got that experience and he literally
gets rushed.
I mean, without even asking him to, he's got 50,000 followers on his Instagram. He's posting about my book that came out last week. He's like, thanks to Jimmy for setting this up. Got to have this experience. Hey, by the way, guys, his book just came out. It's #1 bestseller in real estate and Amazon. Go buy it, and it's just like, he got it in that moment. And so I'm just always looking for opportunities to give people an experience.
That's awesome. I think it's easy to kind of see a lot of the successes, and kind of with the goal of this podcast is to kind of get into some of the other stuff. I'd be curious, like, do you have some of like I know your mindset, and you're not going to call it a failure because I know you don't fail. You just learn from stuff.
Oh, I have all sorts of failures. I'll call it that.
I'd love to hear some of your favorite ones. Like what are some of the most epic events you tried to throw that just
I got
sucked?
some good ones. Oh, so by the way, don't be afraid of the word failure and don't be afraid of failing. I think that's a mistake we make. I absolutely have failures. I have failures all the time. I have failure last week. I had failures. But I'm not afraid of failures. Like to me, failures are whatever. Like to me, the only true failure is to not try something because you're afraid to fail, honestly. And I say that, I can say that with confidence because people see how I do things and live, and I'm clearly just throwing stuff at the fan half the time, and letting it stick. But
I think we need to put a beep there just for just a little salt and pepper to that.
You guys want to hear a funny story? I did a TV show. This is one of my failures. Actually, this is funny, but I did a TV show when I was 22. It's called Not on the First Date. And what I did, remember Blind Date? They'd go around with the cameras and they'd put pop-up bubbles and make it all funny. So I was like, that'd be hilarious if we did this in Provo. So I did it. And KJazz picks it up. We end up becoming the #1 show on KJazz for Sunday nights, over 90,000 viewers per week. I mean, it went really good, but I was the one doing everything, and I was exhausted, and I didn't make any money because I had to pay everyone else. I had to buy all this equipment. So I ended up losing money on the show, even though we were like a huge success at that time, But what reminded me of that is one of the episodes, it's episode #2, my buddy's at dinner at this pizza place with a girl, and he all of a sudden, so this is what really happens. Like he just looks down and he goes, "What the heck?" something just touched my leg. And it's the girl's laughing her head off. On the TV show, when it came out, here's what came out. It said, "What the beep? Something just touched my beep." And the dude like called me. He's like, "That's not what I said." I'm like, "Doesn't matter. I edited the show." And the girl's dying laughs. So it looks perfect. But my point is like, you know, that show, was it a failure? Heck no. Like, I got so many. All I did was go around to every business owner in town and ask if we could film at their location and try to get sponsor money. You know, if Bam Bams existed then, we'd have filmed one here, you know? And I was getting people like Seven Peaks paid me $10,000. I didn't even have the show on the air yet. I was just hustling. All of a sudden, I'm taking all these checks. I'm like, I better put something together. So, like, I made sure it was really good, and it was pretty fun. Like, I knew worst case, I could buy airtime at like 6 a.m, and it would really be bad for my sponsors. But we ended up working. But I didn't make any money. So was that a failure? I don't know. I say no, right? I'll give you a really good example. I had and again, the word failure, I love to fall on my face. I really do. I tried to go out and do Vivint Solar a couple years ago. So I went to Arizona State in 2012. I just wanted to try something different. But I had my real estate team was the top team in Utah County that year. So I couldn't just.
Did you go down and do the master's in real estate?
So I went and did the master's in real estate. Yeah, but it was a 9-month course. It was perfect because I'm like, okay, I don't want to leave my team. I can't just stop real estate. This actually helps my career eventually in real estate. And it gave me 9 months away. Well, in the 9 months I was gone, my team did awesome. We ended up getting this investor from Newport Beach that bought like 70 houses in a 2.5 month span. It was my best year ever. And I was like, well, I kind of got a little bit prideful. I'm like, oh, I don't actually have to be here in Utah to do this. So Vivint Solar was recruiting me hard to go work for them. And they offered me a bunch of things that on paper sounded amazing. I'm like, I'll just do both. So I end up living in Santa Rosa. This is in 2013. I mean, I'd already been a realtor for 8 years at the time. My team was number 1 the year before. Wow. And I go out to Santa Rosa, and I mean, it was hard. And the difference was when I was at ASU, I was in the back of the class running comps and checking with all my emails and running all my stuff for my clients all day. With this, you got to be out on the doors. You got to be training guys and all this. And honestly, like, I was doing okay. I was a decent sales guy for them, but I wasn't supposed to recruit to the area because we were opening Vegas. That was going to be my area. So I was waiting, and I was making literally 10% of what I'd been making as a realtor before. And my real estate business started kind of like dwindling off. And then I had 2 of my closest friends try to use my team to buy a house. At the time, I hadn't set my team up properly, and they had a bad experience, and they both told me, and I was like, dang. And I knew, I was like the old saying, if you try to catch 2 rabbits, they both get away. And I was out in California. I ended up moving to Huntington Beach to try it a little bit different way. And after 4 months, I woke up one day and I'm like, I love real estate. I don't want to be doing this. And I just packed my stuff. I called the regional manager guy, and his name's Reno Mendenhall. He's such a stud. And I'm like, hey, Reno, I got some bad news, man. I'm halfway home. Packed up all my stuff.
I'm halfway home.
I was like, I had like 17 solar deals going at the time, which was really, it was quite a bit. Yeah. I said, look, here's the deal. You can have them. I don't need a referral fee. You just can't call me about them. If something goes wrong, it's a done deal. It's dead. And he's like, you're crazy. I'm like, I know. Sorry. And I went home. And I mean, that was a total failure. Like my business, I had 2 deals under contract when I got back. To give you an idea, right now I have like 54 or something. We usually have between 30 and 50 deals under contract at a time. And we had 2. I mean, I was like, I knew coming back though, I'm like, okay, if I come back, I really am going to have to hit this hard. I'm going to have to make this work because otherwise it's going to look like I failed at solar, and I just didn't want to have that, you know. So yeah, I mean, that was a total failure though. It was a total bust. But here's the best part of both of those, right? So like go back to the TV show. I literally have 6 deals going right now with Gary Britton. He's the owner of Seven Peaks. And he hired me because of our relationship from freaking when I did the TV show 15 years ago. And then,
that's crazy.
And from Vivint Solar, I've counted over 60 homes to guys that I met by going and doing Vivint Solar. I kind of knew that was my worst case scenario. Like I knew I'd get to know these guys, but also you have to have credibility. So I'd never went and tried to like, people just, they can't get out of their own way. They try to get something or they try to prove themselves. It's like most people just want your presence. Like most people, if you're just there and you're a good energy and you're having a good time, you're not trying to be a jerk, like that's about enough. And then all of a sudden you have to build the credibility. Like I see all these young influencers on Instagram and they're talking about how to live life. And you're like, dude, you're 25. Like there's a reason my freaking guy that manages my money isn't 26 years old. You know what I mean? It's like half the realtors I know don't own a house. I own 15. Like it's a different process when you've bought into this thing. And so it's like, I look at these influencers and I kind of think, you kind of have to have that credibility piece first. And so I always tell young people, I'm like, spend 10 to 12 years in one career becoming really great at it. Because you got to have credibility if you're going to go out and teach other people how to do it. And so for me, real estate was that vehicle, right? Like I was able to prove myself as a realtor. So now as I'm doing and making the other things happen, I actually have the credibility. And so it works out really well. It's like if you look me up, you're like, okay, yeah, that guy can teach, like we'll bring that guy in. As opposed to like, I've got this one girl that I'm friends with, and bless her heart on Instagram, she posts 20 times a day, but homegirl's never made more than 20 grand a year. I'm like, sweetie, like you got to just go do something first. Like nobody should be listening to you. They shouldn't. Like this is just
Right.
how it is. So
It's true. So, I mean, I guess looking at that Vivint story, I mean, another plus that comes out of that is that's where you realize that you are in love with real estate, right?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that's pretty valuable.
I mean, to actually like be in a position, and it's one thing for people to be like, I love my job, but they've never tried anything else.
Right.
Or to say like, I don't need money if you've never had money, or if you have or whatever. But it's a whole different thing when you've like actually gone and tried other things. Like I really tried a bunch of other things. And then I realized, I just love real estate. Like I'll always have my hand in real estate because I love it. And I learned to really appreciate what I had, the team around me and everything else.
Right. Well, yeah, in 4 to 6 months, I mean, obviously you're no quitter. Because, I mean, if you're doing deals and you're still making a lot more money back home while you're doing that, the fact that you stuck it out, especially in a pretty saturated place, right? That's impressive. I would have lasted a week. I sold alarms for 9 years.
It was hard. Like it was funny because I'm like back home. I had like this really good life,
Right.
The year before I sold 187 houses.
Oh
I mean,
my
it was
gosh.
insane. I made over
nuts.
$1 million, and I like went out to do this other thing. And it was like every day I'm like, what am I doing? So
That's
like,
crazy.
I mean, ultimately, what was it though that made you want to go do it? Was it just
I had
just a curiosity
Yep,
to do it?
that whole curious thing. I said I had an itch that needed to be scratched, man. I always wondered if I should have done door to door. I was like, I always knew I'd be good at it. I sold meat door to door, and I was the best at it. I mean, I could make $2,000 a day selling meat door to door. That was before like people really were making huge
Right.
money on the doors, And I just was good at door to door. I love to talk to people. And so I always kind of had this like, should have I, shouldn't have I? And I just had to know. And they offered me a pretty sweet package, if I'm being honest. Like they ended up getting some legal things with Nevada, so we couldn't open Vegas. But they were giving me that area with like 50 sales guys under me. I mean, I had to go prove myself for a few months. But I thought because of my experience in Arizona that I could still do the real estate and have an equal year, and it just wasn't the case.
Right.
So is that when you kind of learned I got to refocus on one thing? Like, have you done something like that since, where you kind of left real estate behind to go and explore something else?
No, I built up my team. My team's better than ever now, my real estate team. So I have 4. There's only 5 of us on my team. The new things just came out this week. We're the number 1 team in Utah right now, in Salt Lake, Utah County. And it's only 5 of us. Every other team on the top 10 has 15 or more agents. Like we are stealth ninjas. Tyler, he's like, the dude is insanely talented real estate agent. I can give him any client and it's done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. My brother Dale, my buddy Alex, and then my admin Chris, like they're all just so good at what they do that people get me an experience better of just working with me. So my job has become more to get the clients in, to network, to show that we're the experts, to build the trust. And then I handed a lot of that off to my team, who does a better job of the actual showing homes and all that kind of stuff. And so everything I do now, even my podcast, my training, my coaching, my speaking, the book I just did, it all ties with real estate and helps build it, as opposed to, Vivint Solar was a completely different career, right? It was a different idea. So everything I do now is to build that real estate.
What have you learned in growing a team? I mean, what kind of heartaches and headaches have you learned in trying to put that team together?
So a couple things. One is that young people just don't have any influence. I'm sorry. They just don't. They don't know people with money. They don't know people buying homes. And honestly, if you're 40 years old, you're not hiring your buddy's son who's 22 to sell your house. You're going to hire someone like me, right? Like I've sold over 2,000 homes. Who are you going to hire? Like you'd be an idiot, since we get paid the same, to hire the other guy. You just would. And so like I've quit hiring young people. They just don't have the influence. You got to grind. Like my first 10 years, all I did was literally on the phones from 8 to 12 every day calling for sell owners. That's how I built my business for 8 to 10 years. And I did that. Religiously for 5 years. Like I didn't miss a day. And and I had a lot of success, but I was just working so hard to build my expertise. And so one is I don't hire new agents anymore. They just don't have enough. I can't hand a client off and know they're going to get the same experience as they would with me with a newer agent. So I only hire agents that I feel like the client is going to get the same experience as if it was me myself, right? The second thing is you can't, there's an old saying, you can't make a duck an eagle. Have you ever heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can take a duck and you can give him eagle wings and you can send him to eagle school and put a little badge on him that says an eagle. At the end of the day, it's still a duck. And so the key to finding really talented people is to find really talented people. Like you can help make them a lot better. But the process of like, if somebody has it, they have it. And
they
if
still
they
have to
don't
have that foundation to build on.
You do. Either you have it or you don't when it comes to sales.
So I want to back up a little bit.
Yep.
You've been asking a lot of the questions. It's been fun to just kind of watch. He hasn't stopped moving. Like the energy is boundless. Like it's pretty cool. I actually really like it. So
can I tell you something about that? I'm a huge believer in energy. I study energy.
Right.
And everything has its own energy. Like its molecules breaking apart. So like somebody walks in a room without turning around if it's good or bad energy, usually.
It's true.
And people, more than anything else, I've opened more doors. I have more friends that are in prominent places, rooms I never belonged in, friendships I never probably should have had, solely because I showed up with a great energy than anything else I've ever done. Like people will gravitate to a good energy. And so like that's what I tell everybody. Just and if you're in a bad energy, you can't hide it. There's no it's real. It's like whatever you're feeling. So if you're in a bad energy, you need to do some stuff to get yourself back to a good energy.
Well, there's obviously a lot of passion too. Like it's an overused word, yes, but you get really excited when you talk about what you love. And you've been talking a lot about what you love, right? And so but what I'm curious about is I kind of want to know the past. I want to know what built up to where you are right now. How old are you?
I'm 37.
37. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Murray.
Okay.
When I was 12 years old, I grew up in Taylorsville. My dad drove an 18-wheeler truck. I mean, we did not have money, but I loved it. I had 6 siblings, and we had the funnest childhood. Like, my parents weren't perfect, but man, they were perfectly imperfect for us because we just did stuff, right? And we moved to Murray when I was 12. And I got really lucky. I had really good friends right off the bat. I avoided some people from my past from Taylorsville that ended up going down dark roads because we were only 12 when I moved. But I'll tell you a story that changed my life. I'll tell you one. When I was 14, so I was a diehard baseball fan. Growing up, everything was baseball to me. And still, I diehard Cleveland Indians fan to this day. Me and Scott talk about it all the time. When I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I was an all-star. I was one of the best players. I was really good. Well, I kind of got lazy with it. My brother was the 2-time state MVP for Taylorsville. Like, I just assumed I deserved to be an all-star, right?
Right.
Well, 14 years old, everyone's growing but me. I was a late bloomer, and I was terrible, and I was not good that year. And so the year-end ceremony, Ken Price Park, it's like an amphitheater kind of stadium, right? You've got all the families there, grandmas, parents, brothers and sisters. We're all sitting together, me and my 14 friends that are the all-star team on the second row, like in this, everyone's behind us, all the families and everybody. Well, out on the field, they would, they gave the trophy to first place, second place, third place. Well, then they start calling up the all-star teams. And they're calling up the 14-year-olds, the coach is out there. And he starts calling up all the kids one by one. We're all sitting there together, keep in mind. And they're calling them up one by one. It gets to about 5 trophies left. I look down the line, and I'm like, oh, crap. I know all 5 of those guys are going to make the team. And they call them up one by one. And I'm sitting there as a 14-year-old, which is like the most impressionable age of your life, right? My life is baseball. And I'll get choked up talking about it today. I'm sitting there, and it gets bound, and I'm the only one sitting there. They've called up every one of my friends, and I feel the weight of the world just shaming me, my parents, one of my friends, their parents. I can see the eyes of my friends out on the field feeling sorry for them, everybody, and I just start bawling. I don't know what to do. I'm just like, it was the worst I've ever felt. To this day, it's the worst I've ever felt. But I had this weird moment of clarity, which I'm so grateful. This changed my whole life. I'm sitting there. I could have blamed the coaches. I could have blamed my parents. I could have blamed the other players. I could have been a victim in so many ways. I said to myself, I'm like, Jimmy, you're sitting here because you didn't work hard enough. And I knew, and I said, I will never be outworked again. I will never let this feeling happen to me again because I got outworked by somebody else. And from that day forward, I ended up starting my junior, senior year for the high school team. We were ranked first in the state. Nobody outworked me on my mission. Nobody outworked me in college. My selling meat. Nobody's outworked me in real estate. everything that's come to me, I just had this like thing where I just was never going to let myself feel like that again. And I just am grateful that I had. That's why I'm so passionate when I tell people, like, you can play victim. Like, you probably have a reason. Like, if you were abused or there's real things, like if you're depressed, there's real things that are like, you're a victim, but it doesn't serve you. And this is what Tony Robbins always talks about. It's like, quit telling yourself that story. It just doesn't serve you. You're right. Like, that can be your story, but why not change that? Why not have a moment where you go, in spite of this, or I'm going to turn this to make my story great. I'm just grateful that I had that moment. It was the worst, man. I was sitting there, I was like just bawling. You can imagine all my friends.
Especially at 14.
Oh, it was bad. I get choked up talking about it today. But it changed my life. And from that day forward, just nobody outworked me.
So where do you fit in your family?
I'm the 6th of 7 kids.
See, I'm telling you, if you're not the baby, that might be the toughest spot to be. 6 out of 7.
Yeah, I mean, it
like
was.
You got to work hard. Like you got to.
Oh, dude, mom and dad came home with groceries. Like, you better, if you wanted an Oreo, you better get it before it gets to the cupboard, dude.
Right.
Like, yeah, seconds. No, that wasn't happening. Like, but it was like it's almost like I'm like, gosh, how could I possibly replicate my youth, because it was so perfect for me. You know, I just learned to hustle, man. I was the kid that I remember when I was like 10 years old. I went to Shopko and they were selling like the theater boxes of hot tamales for like 33 cents. And I remember thinking, like, these are worth $1. And I went home, I borrowed $10 from my dad, walked back to Shopko, bought 30 of them, went door to door selling them, paid my dad back his $10. I had $20 as a 10-year-old. You're rich. Like, you've made it. You never have to work again, you know? But that was like my
thinking like that.
That was my
Scott
mentality.
Warner.
So that's
yeah. No, it's true. You know Scott.
Yeah, of course.
Dude, Snack Shack. That's
we've talked about these stories.
It's crazy to be that age and to think about like making money.
Dodger and Cash did it.
That's true.
Right?
But Scott was like,
yeah.
I mean,
well, I think too many parents like give their kids things instead of, my dad just couldn't. My parents couldn't. They didn't have any money. So, but it's like, if you make your kids think about it, like, you know what, go figure out a way to make some money. Like, come back with me with 3 or 4 ideas and, you know, spend 2 hours thinking about it. Right. Map out your plan. We'll pick the best one and I'll help you get there. Like, if you do that, it's so valuable to a kid. And I watched, you know, some of my little nieces and nephews do it. I had a lady in my office a couple of years ago. She had to raise money for her daughter's dance or something. I don't know. They're going to Orlando or something. And she comes in and she says, "Hey, we're selling cookie dough for my daughter. Would you like to buy some?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. You know, have her come in. I'll buy several." And she goes, "Well, I'm just kind of doing it for her." And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to buy any off you, but I'll buy them off her." And she goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, it's just a good, you know, this is a guaranteed sell. It's a really good experience for her to get some confidence to go out and earn something." She goes, "Don't tell me how to raise my daughter." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "How did we just get to here? Like, get the hell out of my office. Like, what is going on?" And I wrote a thing on Facebook just like, hey, I didn't put her name on there. I just like told the experience. And then she goes and starts commenting like, "Jimmy, you didn't need to attack." And I'm like, "Lady," I said, "tell your daughters to call me. I'll still buy the cookie dough, but I'm not buying it from you." So her daughter calls, this is actually pretty fun. Her daughter calls me that night and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm going to show her. I'll buy it all. I don't care. I told her I would. And the daughter's like, "Hey, so-and-so, I'm just selling some cookie dough." I'm like, "How many do you have to sell?" And she's like, "Oh, like 14. I'm like, "How much are they?" She's like, "Oh, they're like $10. I'm like, "You know what? I'll take all 10 of them." The funniest part is she's like, "Oh, wow, thank you so much." She goes, "Well, hold on. My sister wants to talk to you. She needs to sell some too." So the sister had like 12 more. And I'm like, oh. And now I got stuck with like 28 cartons of cookie dough. I'm like,
the mom's
whatever.
like, "Who's laughing now?"
It was pretty funny. So she, but no, my point of the whole lesson was like, like my buddy the other day, he's actually another realtor. His name's Kelly Carone. He put a thing on Facebook. His kids had a lemonade stand going. And I text him, like, "Hey, man, he's bought a couple of investment properties from me. Like, I love the guy. He's a cool realtor." I said, "Hey, I'll help out your kids. Where are they at?" And so I just, you know, drove over there and, you know, gave him a nice little bonus and tip on their thing. And he's like, "Dude," he's like, "you wouldn't believe like what you did for my kids. They're so excited." It was just like they were out there hustling, selling.
Exactly.
I drove 20 minutes out of my way, dropped off $20 and, you know, taught those kids. And I made a lesson. I'm like, "Hey, it's really cool. You guys are out here earning money." Like I made a big deal out of it. And so I'll always honor kids like hustling and trying to earn that stuff. That's what I did. Yeah.
So college?
Yeah. So I went to, well, it's funny. This is pretty good too. I got home I never took college serious. Like I never even thought of college. Like I knew I was going, but I don't know. So I needed a better mentor probably. I was just like, I got home from my mission. I went on LDS mission after high school. I got home and I went to UVU and got my associates. And I kid you not, so I get my associates in December, and I go in like first week of January to BYU, and I'm like, hey, I'm here to sign up for class. And they're like, this is 2005. I'm a 24-year-old. Like, this is like adult stuff I probably should have known. This is a good failure story. This is just me being an idiot. But and it was so funny. And they're like, okay, great. Well, have you been accepted? I'm like, well, no, that's what I'm here to do, And they're like, well, did you apply? I'm like, that's what I'm doing. And they're like, okay, for the fall? I'm like, no, I want to take classes now. And they're like, well, sir, the deadline to apply was like September. I'm like, oh. Well, like at UVU, you just sign up, you just come into class. So like, they're like, yeah, that doesn't really work here. That's how I ended up in real estate. I had nothing to do for 6 months. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go get my real estate license. That's literally how I ended up in real estate. And then
sir, that's a state university.
Yeah, they're like, we're a real college. But yeah, so I got my associates, took 4 years off, and then I got engaged and didn't work out. Ended up breaking that off, and I just wanted to meet new people. So I went back to school and finished it. But I had this plan. It was pretty good. I'd wear a suit. Back then I wore a suit every day as a realtor because I wanted to hide my age and show my professionalism. Right. But I would end up wearing it to school because it'd be like 3 hours in the middle of my day, And I'd go in the first day to all my professors and I'd say, hey, I run a real estate business. I'm trying to get my degree, but sometimes I can't be here if I have appointments. Like, I just need to know if there's some flexibility here. And I would sign up for like 8 classes, and the 4 teachers that said they were flexible were my 4. So I was like, okay, cool. And oh my gosh, I had the easiest college ever. Like, I got it finished, and it was a joke. I made a mockery of it. I really did. But I got it finished. And then same thing, when I went to Arizona to get my master's, I just wanted to do something different. And that's how I ended up with a master's degree.
You have a master's.
Yeah, I even taught a semester at UVU in the business school. I'm like, I am not qualified to be here, but this is fun.
See, I would have never, usually when I meet people like you, right, just super smart hustlers, you've built something awesome. It's like there wasn't time for school.
But
you know
I learned how to do school without doing any work.
Well, that's
so
true.
the whole thing to me, was
I graduated high school.
Dude, the whole thing was a networking opportunity. So Gary Vaynerchuk was talking to Alex Rodriguez the other day on his podcast, and he says, college is a complete waste of time. I said, no, it's not. But you have to look at college not as your education, but as your networking opportunity. Where else are you going to get? I mean, think about it. If you take 5 classes a semester, it's 30 to 50 kids. You have an opportunity to meet 100 to 200 people every semester for 4 years. Like, you should walk out of there with 200 to 300 really close friends if you do it right. So I would literally go to class. On my life, I did this. And first day of class, I'd have a bag full of like gummy candy and a bag full of chocolate, okay? And I just pass it out to everyone in the class. They're like, what the hell? This guy's just like, this is in college. And then at the end of the class, I was like, all right, who's bringing the chocolate tomorrow? Who's bringing gummy? And I had this in every class. I'd set this up. And I'd bring one day I'd just bring 30 energy drinks just for kicks and giggles. And I'd always make sure the professors got them. And the professors always I didn't take half my finals. They didn't even care. They're like, Jimmy, you're good. Like, I straight up just was there to just meet people. And I knew that. And so I went with that intention and went to UVU instead of BYU because you can't do that everywhere.
I mean, how many people know that? And teachers are people too, right? They want to be, they are not used to being talked to the way that you talk to them.
Well, even when I was getting my master's at Arizona State, it's a top 25 business school. Right. And there was a class where it was all about financing. You had to use Excel. I'd never used Excel. I've never bothered to learn it. I have somebody that does that for me. And he's like teaching us these waterfalls and spreadsheets for developing. And I'm like, oh man, this is a mess. There's no way.
Speaking your language now.
Dude, yeah. I seriously was like wanted to cry. But he made the big mistake. He goes, first day of class. And this guy's a developer. And he's teaching in his spare time, right? He's just doing this to give back. I'm like, he doesn't want to be bothered. But he's like, hey, if you guys have problems, here's my home phone number. You can meet with me before or after class. So first night, I'm like blowing him up. I'm like, hey man, it's like 9:30 at night. I'm like, hey man, I got a question on this. He's like, all right. So for like 10 minutes, he tries to I'm like, I'm not really
on this
getting
waterfall right now,
dude. Dead serious. And so he's like, let's meet before class. Before class to come in, and then the next day I did it again. And he's like, meet me after class. And the third day I did it again. And he's like, Rex, listen. He goes, he puts his hand about 3 feet off the ground. He goes, here's where most people are. He puts his hand a foot above that, and he goes, here's where we're trying to get him to. He goes, here's where you are. He puts his hand like 6 inches off the floor. He puts his hand up about a foot, and he goes, if we can get you to here, I'm going to give you an A. How does that sound? He's like, quit calling me. And then when we graduated, it was so funny. He pulls me aside at the graduation and he goes, listen, there's only 2 kids in this class I'm going to definitely stay in touch with, and you're one of them. He goes, I know you're not an idiot. I just
really
laughed.
cool.
He's like, stay in touch, man.
So at the football game, I overheard something that I didn't know about you.
Oh.
And this is kind of where I'm trying to chronologically build this up.
That's good. Yeah.
I heard you try out some stand-up comedy.
I did. Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? And when was that?
That was when I was 22, 23, 24. So we would go. I loved live comedy. This is my favorite. And we would go to the comedy clubs, and some of the openers were really good. The headliners are almost always good.
Right.
But some of the openers were bad, and I was like, I'm funnier than them. And I'm like, I'm gonna try my hand. There was open mic nights, And it was so funny. So I was actually selling meat one day, and I run into the owner of Johnny B's at the time, John Schaefer. And I said, hey, man, could I come try 5 minutes? I've been practicing with my friends. And he's like, well, we don't just let the guy that's practicing with his friends come do stand-up comedy. And I said, well, what if I bring 30 people? Because I knew the club had been struggling, and he goes, you bring 30 people, he can go as long as you want. At the time, they're getting about 30 people a show. So I tell everyone I know. And I've already built a big network by then, And so I end up showing up. First time, I've never done stand up, and I got like 120 people there. I mean, the show is just wild. And he's just looking at me like, I don't know who you are, but I love you. You've saved my month. I can pay my mortgage. And I got up. Well, it's funny because there was another guy before me. His name's Dave Metcalf. If you guys want to see a hilarious comedian, I happened to go right after Dave Metcalf, which was like the worst luck ever. He's so funny. He's a hunchback, and he's just plays on these, like one of his jokes, I'll tell you, it's the funniest joke I've ever heard. It was the first night I ever did stand up. He tells this joke before I go up, so I got to follow this. But he goes, keep in mind he's a hunchback, right? And he's like, growing up, life was really hard, man. And I decided one day, I was like, I've had enough. I'm going to hang myself. I'm going to end my life. I'm just going to hang myself. He goes, but then in that moment, I remembered something. I remembered something that stopped me. I remembered that I have no neck. He's like, so there I am dangling from my shoulders trying to figure out how to get down. And I'm like, my friends are dying. They're crying just like you guys all right now. It's the funniest joke I've ever heard. And I'm like, I got to follow this guy. Thankfully, I just went for like 5 minutes. All my friends were generous and laughed. And the owner's like, dude, come back whenever you want. Me and him became close friends. I went up to Wise Guys. I would call my Salt Lake friends. And they would go up there, and Keith Stubbs would give me 5 minutes up there, and he's a close friend of mine now too. I actually rent out the club quite a bit, a couple times a year for my clients to just enjoy. We've had Ryan Hamilton and some of the best comedians in the country. I've Nate Bargatze. I got private parties with these guys. And,
wow.
Keith sets that up for me. But yeah, that's how I got started. So I did it for a few years. It's hard though if you're not. I mean, you got to write about 20 hours for a minute of good jokes if you're good, to be really good. Jerry Seinfeld says 40 hours for 1 good minute, to give you an idea. And I just was too busy. I was doing the meat company. I was doing the TV show. I was in school. I was trying to get real estate started. And so I just didn't have time to keep doing it and write new jokes. And so I quit doing it. And I'll go do it every now and then. Like Norm Macdonald was doing a show, and I'm actually the president of the Chris Farley Club. Me and my friends started that in high school. And so like when he got a start in Hollywood, we got to go out there, and I know his brothers really well, and we got to meet with Adam Sandler, David Spade, Chris. I got pictures with them all and stuff. Jeez. I mean, once that guy's dead, not many people are vying to be the head of his fan club, but Norm Macdonald, because he was so close to Chris, I wanted to do comedy that night, so I called Keith. I hadn't done comedy in like 3 years. I'm like, hey, can I open? And he's like, you still got it? I'm like, yeah, I got 5 minutes. He's like, all right. So I went up and did it. And so I'll do it every now and then just for kicks and giggles like that, like a 5 minutes. Or, what's fun is though, like every now and then somebody will come up like, dude, your joke about this. I have one joke that everyone just would die. And it was, you want me to tell it real quick?
I was going to say, if you weren't going to tell it,
this is my one good joke that was in Utah County. Everybody thought this was the funniest thing they ever heard. But so this is the joke. Yeah, so I walked in. I just moved down here to Utah County, went to UVU, and I signed up for a seminary or an institute class, and I couldn't find. They told me that's where all the hot girls hang out, so I was like pretty excited, but I wasn't seeing anything. Went to a few classes. Then I saw the perfect class, the Miracle of Forgiveness class. Those girls are putting out.
I should have recorded that.
That's the joke, but to this day, once a month or once every 3 or 4 months, someone will come up like, dude, you had a joke that put me on the floor. And anyway, that was That was my finest joke, but it could only be used in like a 60-mile radius.
So, Jimmy, you talk a lot about like mentors and stuff like that. When did you first get into that? When did you start looking for those? Or have you always just naturally kind of gravitated towards something like that?
I consider myself pretty lucky. I didn't really have any mentors before my mission. I had 2 great mission presidents. One was military. One was like just super loving.
Where'd you go on your mission?
Monterey, Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And my second day on my mission president, my Army guy, he's like, "How you doing, Elder Rex?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I'm kind of like being honest, My comp doesn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And he's like, he slams his desk down. And he goes, "Damn it, Elder Rex. I don't want any sissies in my mission. You don't feel good? Go to work. You don't like what's going on? Go to work." He's like, "Look, I don't care if you can't speak the language. You just try the best you can. You go to work." That was it. That was our interview. I'm like, got it. I got one choice. I guess I'm going to work. It was the best advice I ever could have got, though, because I went to work. I had the best time of my life. But so I had a really good, some people I really looked up to there. And then I got home. And honestly, Herman, the meat guy, he was a freaking genius. If he wasn't on drugs, I would have been the guy who was going places. But he was an amazing mentor, actually, on sales and life. Just he really caught a lot of these things you talk about, like how to relate to people and how to catch things. He was very good. He taught me a lot of that. And then from there, when I got into real estate, my first 6 months, I sold like 3 homes. I was about out. I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I was 24. I had no influence. And I went to a seminar. And a guy was teaching the seminar, and it was everything I'd ever wanted to learn. And honestly, in my life, I had like $500 to my name. And I went up to him at the end of the 3-day seminar. It was $1,000 a month for coaching. And I just knew I had to do it. And I said, "Hey, listen, I got a house closing in a few weeks. If you'll hold the credit card info, it's going to bounce if you try to run it now. But if you'll wait a few weeks and call me, I need to do this. I'm in." And what had happened is the 3 days, they gave you a homework every night. And I did it, and it was working. I was getting leads. So I was like, "Okay, I need to do this." And it was a guy named Mike Ferry was the organization. He's the #1 real estate mentor in the world. And this guy's like speaks my language, like total, like grind it, go get it, learn what you're doing and do it all day, right? Like the guy I needed in that time. And my first month with his training, coaching, mentorship, I sold like 30 homes. I was on fire. Next month, I sold like 20-something homes. By the end of that first year, I'd closed over 60 homes, and 6 months in, I had 3. The next year, I sold 98 homes. I was one of the 2 finalists for the Salesman of the Year on the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. And because I was so young with this success, I was just doing his system. Like when I went to that conference.
What was the system?
Literally memorize the scripts, call people for 3 to 4 hours a day, practice the scripts, role play the scripts, know exactly what to do on the appointments, and go do it. I mean, it was just the dude could have taught, like, I mean, it related to me really well, because it's like, that's how the mission was. That's how meat selling was, right? It was like, know what to do and do it all day. That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
But in real estate, that's such a foreign concept. It really is. There was only like 10 of us out of 2,000 agents in the state calling for sell by owners. It's crazy. It's somebody puts a red sign in their house, says, "I don't have an agent and I need to sell." And you're not going to call that person. You know what I mean? Right. But so he, because I was so young, I got a lot of opportunity to be a part of really special mentorship groups. So I had a guy named Bill Pipes and Bob Fitzgerald and Tom Ferry, his son, and all these top real estate coaches. I mean, if you look at the top 8 coaches of all time, 4 of them personally coached me. I just had this opportunity because I was young. I was like this little phenom guy, and I was just hungry. I was just hustling, But then, of course, the market tanked, and that was its own beast. But Mike had formed these groups called the Top Producers. And you had to sell 75 or more homes a year to be there. And we'd fly out every quarter to a new city, Houston or Miami, San Fran, Chicago, and we would mastermind. And at the time, I'd never done a mastermind. So to me, it was just this cool opportunity. And because they were coming from all these different cities, agents were really opening up what they do. And I had the opportunity to just soak it all in. Like at one point, I'm sitting next to Chris Heller. I copied his system. Not knowing who he was at the time, he just seemed to... Like he was selling 400 homes a year in San Diego. Guy was making $6 million a year as a realtor. It was like crazy. He ended up becoming the CEO of Keller Williams, the largest franchise in the world of real estate. But at the time, he was just the guy sitting next to me, right? And I'm like soaking up all this info. So these are the kind of people at this meeting, and I just happen to be there because I'm this young phenom. And Mike would put me on stages to show what I was doing. And so I had a lot of really cool opportunity and this mentorship from all these people. I just had access that, honestly, I earned it by producing, but I got, the timing of it was very advantageous. And I got into books, young audio books, You know, I always joke, I got my degree at school, but my whole education I got in my car. I always had a CD in my car listening to, you know, Earl Nightingale or Jim Rohn or one of these guys. And that's where I really, you know, got all that from.
Do you continue that today?
Yeah, so I hired my first life coach in 2010. I still have my real estate coach. I have a life coach. I've got a call with her tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I hired a woman. She's amazing. Got her through the Tony Robbins organization. And she just really helped me with, I mean, growing up, honestly, like at 30 years old, I kind of felt like I was a failure because I wasn't married. I was in a culture that told me that was the case. And I didn't feel like I should ever be married. And, you know, I don't really do the church thing like most people these days. I'm more into more about like who you are as a person, not necessarily, I haven't been to church in years, you know, it's not my thing, but I love the church. But at the same time, she taught me and helped me to kind of rewire and get rid of a lot of my shame I carried for like just living authentically, and help me more focus on everything's about motive and intent. You know, it's all about love. Like even Jesus, when he was here, it's all he taught was freaking love. Like he didn't care if you were an adulterer or if you were, the guys he made fun of were the rule keepers. He was like, it was always intent. And so she really helped me to understand how to love and how to truly love people and try to get motive and intent as opposed to, you know, this is black and white, right and wrong.
So sitting where you are today, kind of where you're at, if everything was taken away and you had to start from scratch, what would you do tomorrow? Your network.
Do I have my same knowledge?
Same knowledge, but no network.
Oh, I would just go and create value I would go to the high, I would go to the places where the people that had the most success were at. That's step number one, be around those people. And I would absolutely find ways to serve them. And it wouldn't take me 6 months before I was in a high six-figure job with one of them because they'd see my value that I've created. That's what I would do.
It's kind of like Family Man, one of my favorite Christmas movies. Do you remember that? Nick Cage?
Yes.
Remember he gets like, wakes up in sweatpants in New Jersey?
He's in the tire shop.
Yeah, he was like the CEO of one of the biggest
hedge
firms,
funds
and
or
he just
whatever.
shows up and starts talking down to the president. It's like, oh, Alan, you're so assertive now, and he's in his minivan. But yeah, he had a job offer inside of 2 weeks?
Yeah, you because people, and this is one of the things that gets missed. Like in the real world, people don't care. I sit on the board for Entrada. You know, Dave Bateman's the founder, owner of that company, and he's one of my closest friends. And he is always looking for talent. He's never once. I am with him all the time. He's never once asked somebody to see a resume. He's looking for talent. That's what all these successful guys are doing. They're looking for talent. Nobody cares about your degree. No one cares about your credentials. They care if you can get a job done. Like in 2019, the guy I hired that kind of helped blow up a lot of my business, like the side things I'm doing. To this day, I'm not sure if he's gone to school. I've never asked him. I honestly don't care. Like he knows how to do everything I need done. He's always training himself to learn the things he needs to, the ClickFunnels and the podcasting and everything else in between. And the dude's a genius. And I've literally never once asked him. I don't know. He might have gone to college or might not. I've never asked him. I honestly don't know. I don't know if Tyler's going, my best guy on my real estate team. He'll sell 150 homes this year on my team. I don't know if he went to college. I think he went for like a semester. I have no idea. People just don't care. It's either you can, It's 2019. You can either get a job done or you can't. So create atmospheres where you can shine, right? Like focus on what you're great at. Don't worry about what you're not, and find a good fit. Find what you're passionate about doing. And then you got to work your butt off. Like I'd have to work really hard, you know, like to build that back up, but I've never been afraid of hard work. So I that's why I live my life. Like I invested my life savings, every dollar I ever had 4 years ago into my buddy's company, Nikola Motors, because I didn't mind being broke. I don't care. I know I can work myself into a good life again. I couldn't live with if he pulled it off and I hadn't invested knowing I could have. And he pulled it off. Yeah,
he did a pretty good job.
He was on the cover of Forbes last week. He's one of the newest billionaires, and I put my life savings into it when it was an idea in his head. You know, it turned out pretty well for me. But,
wow.
But my point is I was fine losing all that money. I honestly live that way. I don't care. I know that I am the asset at this point, and I could go get 1 million jobs tomorrow, you know, that would be plenty for what I
How can you help someone kind of create that confidence in them? I know that's kind of what you're trying to do with your courses and stuff like that, but for people who are listening, that's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's go hang out with super successful people. But they're like, who am I? Right? Everyone kind of battles with that imposter syndrome and what value they have to offer someone like that. And so how do you help someone find either that passion they have or find that inside of them?
It's a great question. And I've been thinking about this a lot because it's like, nobody wants to buy stuff from you coaching, especially if it's like, look what I've done. It's what can you take away? What pain can you relieve of mine? Everyone has these pains. And if you can help them find that, that's what I try to focus my training on. And the number one thing that I tell people is you've got to start putting little wins together. When you're winning all day, you start to feel good. That's why you should probably start selling meat door to door or alarms door to door as opposed to houses, because all of a sudden you get 60 or 90 houses of alarms sold and you realize these little wins are adding up. You get confidence. All of a sudden you're like, I can sell, right? Like even if you go days without selling, by the end of a summer you sold 100 units and you made, 30, 40,000 bucks. It's pretty good. And so do little things to get little wins every day. So instead of, I don't know, whatever thing you're trying to accomplish, whatever your grand goal is, think of little tiny things you can do to win every day. That's why there's the famous speech the guy gave, the commemorative speech of making your bed in the morning, because it's a win to start your day. It's a little win. And what you do is every time you have a win, you put a little bit of confidence in your bank, right? Or a little bit of integrity goes into your bank account. And every time you don't, here's a good example. I help a lot of guys come to me that have like a porn addiction, okay? And if you're like dead set on never doing it again, that's not gonna happen, you're just gonna lose. Like if you believe the biggest sin next to killing someone is getting a sexual thing, and you have physiological needs, you're going to falter back to those needs and pornography. But if you can get little wins, like, hey, let's do this or this, I give them little wins, little things they can do, so that they don't shame themselves when it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. Like
they get dopamine from that instead of the porn.
For sure.
Right?
You get the win. You're like, hey, you know what? I did good. And I'm like, hey, you know what I want you to do today? I want you to, I give them these little victories they can get throughout the day or the week or the month, where all of a sudden at the end of it, they go, hey, you know what? I do have some self-control. I do have some power over this. Like, I'm not an addict. I just simply have physiological needs that are trying to get met here. Right. And I teach them to go and talk to girls, and I teach them to go and just do these little things that'll help them. Again, just get little wins. Go on a date, go out with friends one night. It's crazy, like how many people don't go a full month without going on a date in the single scene, and they're just like, or like people like hey, you know what? For this week, we're eliminating Instagram. Like that's one of your triggers. That's something that makes you feel bad because you see other people succeeding. Get it off to this week only. Sunday you can download it, or I'll say, you know what? You can look at Instagram whenever you want, but you always have to delete the app and re-download it every time you want to look at it. It's like
that's clever. I've never heard that.
Just
one
put
before.
enough effort in it, they're not going to do it, right?
Like, gosh, I have to log back in. This is bull crap.
Anyway, so I don't know, just little wins, whatever it is. If you're trying to get business, think of little wins. Like, where can I get a win today? Where can I get a victory today? And the victory most of the time isn't the end result. It's the action that you put into it. So I always say life's like a funnel, and people want to focus on what comes out the bottom. That's the result. You can't control that. All you control is what goes in the funnel. So if you put enough positive things in the funnel every day, if you're always filling up your funnel with good and positive things, it can't help but have good come out. But if you're filling it up with Netflix and bad stuff, or like rumors and talking about other people all day long, that's what comes out. And so you got to focus on what goes in the funnel, not the end result of what comes out.
So Jimmy, what one thing that you've stopped doing has had the most impact on you? And then what one thing have you started to do that's had the most impact on you?
Such a good question. So the one thing I stopped doing, this is going to sound counterproductive to productivity, but it's the best thing I've ever done, is I stopped having expectations for what my life needed to be. It's so powerful because we usually have somebody else's expectations, and all the pain of life comes from not fulfilling these expectations. When I truly said, you know what, my life doesn't need to be anything. Like, you look back, you're 40 years old, you're 30 years old, and like all these worries and all these things you had, and it's like, you know what, life's pretty good, And when you start to realize like all the things you worried about, all the pain, all the things that you thought like you needed to be or needed to happen, yet here you are today and you're fine. And it's like, so for me, I don't have any expectation for what my life needs to be. Like, I have it designed like what I want to happen next, and I work towards those goals of mine, and I'm very intentional about that. But I am so open and okay with the idea that that might not be what happens. Like, if something else comes from it, I know how that will play out in the end. And most of your greatest blessings come from the things you thought were the end of the world. So I don't know, like, to me, the beauty of life is found in the mess. And if people truly understand that, like, what causes you pain? I don't have bad days. Like, I just don't. Like, if things go wrong, it's like, okay, like I'm okay with the idea that I can die tomorrow. I'm okay with that. Like, and it gives me a freedom to live however I want.
Yeah, I like that a lot. In fact, I was talking about that this morning, about like just letting go of expectations and comparing yourself to others and just being okay with who you are. Like I was at this coaching retreat last week, and one of the girls was saying, I haven't worked out because, and she started naming all these excuses, and the coach was like, no, you just didn't work out. And that's okay. You just didn't work out, and you got to be okay with that. You don't have to kind of justify why you didn't do it.
Yeah, like I was at my nephew's baseball game it was a couple of weeks ago, I go quite a bit to my niece's and nephew's stuff. For as busy I am, I feel like I do a really good job of it. But I usually only go for about 20 to 45 minutes, depends on what I can fit in, and I watched my nephew hit. It was one at bat, and then I had to go, and I was like, well, I was saying bye to my brother and his wife, and one of their friends is like, wait, you're leaving? It's the first inning. How are you going to just leave? I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I just don't care what you expect me to do with my life. And she was like so thrown back. I'm like, look, that was a little harsh. I came for as long as I could, but I just really don't care what you think about my decision to leave now. I didn't have a single aunt or uncle come to one at bat my entire life. I've been to this kid's games like 45 times this year. He's fine.
That's one of my favorite quotes. Other people's opinion of you are not your business. None of your business. Mm-mm. It doesn't matter what other people think about you.
And honestly, the most attractive quality in a human anyway is to be 100% unapologetically whoever you are. Like, think about that. Like, when you just own who you are, like, look at Derek Stevenson. Everyone loves that guy.
Right.
You can pretend you don't, but you do.
Right.
And it's because he's so unapologetically him. It's just like everyone wants to be like that. People are gravitated to people that are just like, I don't really give a crap what you think about me.
Right.
That's why I try to live like that.
Well, I think we all kind of envy that sometimes. You kind of just wish that you could shed the skin and just be yourself.
Totally.
It takes balls, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a superpower.
So we don't want to keep you too long, but there's two more questions one
good.
Little hole that we got to figure out. Real estate. When did that? Because we heard stand-up comedian. You were selling meat door to door, right?
Yeah.
So when did it kind of hit you that you wanted to be in real estate? Was it a person? Was it an experience?
Sitting in the counselor's office at BYU when they told me I couldn't get in because I didn't apply. No, so I had a buddy actually. It's funny because Randy Garnes, a close friend of mine, he's actually was on the sideline with me at the BYU game Saturday. He had a company called Prosper. And I had a buddy that was working there, and I didn't really know what I was going to do next. And my buddy called me and goes, hey, I'm selling these real estate programs, and they gave me some free ones to like learn it. And he's like, do you want them? I'm like, yeah, I'll listen to them. He knew I listened to CDs on tape, and I had like one of them was Robert Kiyosaki, one was Carlton Sheets, who his stuff doesn't even work anymore, and then it was Robert Greene, who's like doesn't exist anymore. But I remember those three,
right.
And I listened to them. I devoured these, and I was obsessed with real estate. I'm like, oh, that's good. And so I knew I kind of wanted to. Worst case, I had a buddy that was going to buy a house, and I'm like, that'd be cool to buy a house. And I was like, I bought my condo in Provo when I was 23. My mom co-signed, and I had to give the realtor like $5,000, and I was like, that would have been nice to just keep it for myself if I had a license. And so I was like, I originally was like, well, I'll just get a license for my own stuff. Then I got my license, and my brother was like, hey, I need you to sell my house. And then all of a sudden it was like a couple other people, and then all of a sudden it just ran with it. But I've always been intrigued with real estate, but it wasn't truly until I kind of got in that moment where I started listening to those CDs, and I went, oh, there's something here. Like, I want to learn all about this.
So that's really interesting because, here we are, 15 years later?
Yeah.
More or less?
Yeah, 15 years, coming up on 15 years in January, yeah.
And 2 days ago on social media, I see you open the box and pull out your own book that you wrote, that you created, which is an incredible thing. I'm looking at it right now, but Next Wave of Influence in Real Estate. And you wrote it.
Yeah, so what I did is, it's kind of funny. So I told you guys about that top producer meeting that Mike Ferry put together. I wanted to recreate that experience, but I didn't really want to put the effort into putting these groups. I got so much value out of that. It changed my life. And I was like, if I could recreate that, it would be so powerful to these agents in 2019. Was at the time 2018 or whatever. But as I was thinking about it, I got lucky. I had an opportunity. So Tim Ferriss, who's like one of my heroes, I copied my podcast after his. His girlfriend is a close friend of mine, and we had the opportunity to hang out on New Year's together. We did this party, and then the next day I got to have brunch with him. And New Year's Day, I'm just sitting with Tim Ferriss, and I'm kind of talking about these ideas, and he's telling me about how he put together Tools of Titan. He sent out a questionnaire to 100 very influential people, and he got these answers to these same 7 questions. And it hit me. I'm like, that's it. That's what I need to do to put this book together. Just do the questionnaires. But I was like, I'll do phone interviews, So I put together the 7 questions. I started researching to find the top 100 millennial real estate agents in the country. And then I was trying to do it myself and just wasn't going anywhere. And then I had the opportunity. I was in Florida, and I got some one-on-one time with Dean Graziosi, who, if you guys are familiar with him, he's like the top real estate influencer in the world. And him and Tony Robbins just had the most successful launch of a product ever online. And Dean was talking to me about how to do a book. And he said, look, here's what you need to do. And he taught me how to do it through, basically I hired somebody to do the interviews over the phone and then transcribe them. He taught me all the stuff, how to do it. So basically this book is 100 interviews, the top millennial real estate agents across the country, all their best. It's their daily habits. It's their golden nuggets. It's their marketing secrets. It's what they do when they face adversity. I mean, it's just really powerful stuff. I had one question where I said, what was your first real estate deal? Because if anybody new picks it up, I just want you to see how easy it is to stumble upon your first deal. That's what most of us do. And so I put this all together. I wrote on every single interview. I read through them once it was transcribed, and then I put my own notes, my own take on that interview, things that I've learned. And my real estate coach, Bill Pipes, who's like the top dude in the country as well, he helped me with those notes, and we put the collaboration together and came up with the book, and we hit #1 on Amazon bestseller for real estate this week.
That's super
Unreal.
cool. Congrats, man. That's
Thanks.
awesome.
Yeah, it's
Very
pretty
cool.
fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It's funny. I have a dream board at my house. I'll take a picture and send it to you, but I put this together 3.5 years ago, and I wanted to accomplish all this by my 40th birthday, which is October 7th, 2021. And I've hit all but like 4 things on there of 40. I mean,
What's left?
There's a few. Got to settle down, I guess is a good way to put it, as one of them. I got to find that dream woman. I probably got to spend a little more time on that and less on everything else. But no, it was funny. I had like all these places I want to go, things I wanted to own, people I wanted to know. And one of them is literally Tony Robbins, like spreading his arms out on the stage with thousands of people out. And at ClickFunnels, like a year and a half after I made this dream board, I find myself on the stage with Operation Underground Railroad. That's a group that I've had the chance to, work undercover with. And me, Tim, the director of the new movie, Operation Toussaint, and Russell Brunson, who owns the company ClickFunnels, are on the stage, and Tony Robbins was on that stage, and I'm literally looking at the exact thing that I put on my dream board. It was the most insane moment of my life. Wow. I put one of my big goals by my 40th is I put a Disney cruise on there. I could care less about Disney, but my whole family's like obsessed with Disney. They've all wanted to do a Disney cruise. So when Trevor's company, hit the $3 billion value, I pulled some money out. And I just booked. We're going in December 6th through the 12th. I'm taking 38 members of my family, Disney cruise to the Bahamas.
That's really cool.
And that was one of the things on the list. And I just, it's the reason I share that is like we build our lives by design, or we react to what happens to us. And so you truly the #1 question I ask people when they're like, Jimmy, you do so many things. And I said, well, let me ask you one question. If everything went right in your life for the next 5 years, what would your life look like? And most people can't answer the question. I'm like, well, of course nothing's going to happen then.
Everybody can answer what they don't want to happen, but nobody can answer what they do want to happen.
Yeah, so I just mapped this thing out. In 2010, I was like, what do I want my dream life to look like? And I got to be honest, I'm kind of living it. And so I wanted to be friends with all the top people in town. I wanted to be experiencing life at this high level. I wanted to be traveling the world. I wanted to be having these experiences with my family and friends. I wanted to be the top guy. One of the things on my dream was a book. I wanted to have a best-selling book. I wanted to do all these different things. And it's kind of funny. It's like, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm going to go do then, because that's what's next on the list. So,
wow.
I don't know. I just think people
There's
underestimate
2 New Years on the list?
What's that?
2 New Years and 1 on the list?
No, but there was a spot in New Zealand that's on there that we got to go visit. So one of the places. Yeah. I was telling Cam before, I'm doing for New Year's this year, I'm getting a group together. We're going to leave the day after Christmas, go do 6 days in New Zealand, do New Year's Eve there. Then we're flying to Bora Bora at 10 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day, and you land in Bora Bora on New Year's Eve at 4 p.m. We're going to go back in time and have 2 New Years. So
December's going to be pretty fun for you.
Every month's fun, man.
It's a cruise
next month
to New Zealand.
Next month, I'm going swimming with the Bucket List family, Garrett G. We're going into the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a liveaboard, and we're going to swim with great whites with no cage. And it's on my list.
That's on my list of things I don't want to happen.
Yeah, you don't have to outswim your buddy. You just got to. The shark just got to outswim your buddy, and you'd be a good guy to go with, man. I'll go with you.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm like the safest person to go camping with. The bear's just going to eat me, and I'll feed him for like 2 weeks. So.
No, I just encourage people. Like people like look forward to the day that, and it's like there's never people are like, when did you find good time to go? Like I just got back. Me and my 8 high school best friends went to Scotland and Ireland for 10 days. Like, how do you find a good time to do that? I'm like, there's not a good time to take 10 days off. You just make it a priority and go do it.
Just
You know, it's like
do it.
people just. I don't know, man. I wish I could pound this into people's heads. Like, what do you want to do? Go do that. Like, just do it. Go give yourself an opportunity to make something happen.
It's awesome.
Cal, very good advice. Very, very good advice. Because I think a lot of that boils down to what you were saying earlier about not just being yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I think that kind of boils in this, or not feeling ashamed for taking time off. And like I always felt ashamed for going to movies in the middle of the day. That's like my thing. Then I read a book by Jen Sincero.
How healthy to take off time in the middle of your day and just spend time with yourself. I always say, if you fall in love with yourself, you never spend a day without someone you love.
Right. I love it.
Dude, I'm serious. I just posted on my Instagram today, Mr. Jimmy Rex. It's the Ho'oponopono prayer. And it's a prayer you say to yourself. Most people are so easy to forgive others and share, like try to tell others they love them, and they don't tell themselves. And so the prayer is, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. But you say it to yourself in the mirror over and over every day. And the self-love that you feel from that, like really internalize that. Like, I love you. Like, Jimmy, I love myself. I'm like, here's why I love you. Like, your heart is so good. You do these things and you're total dit half the time, but I love you anyways. And I forgive you for the things you do wrong because you just didn't know better. And thank you for like honoring your heart and doing these things. And I'm sorry that sometimes you're kind of an idiot, but I love that. And it's like you create this self-love and people are gravitated to it. So I don't know, check that out if you're interested. But that's, if you're listening to this and feeling a little bit like you need some self-love, but people are way too hard on themselves. Like, I love that. Take time to yourself, like sharpen the saw, man. Like, you got to spend that time on yourself and get right.
Right, dude. You're a bonfire. I really like that saying. Create the fire and gather people around. And
yeah, people come get warm.
Dude, you're like the Burning Man. You're like the whole festival wrapped into one. I've never been there, but man,
I was going to go this year, but I ended up not working it out. But I'm going next year if you want to go.
We just need to start a new one because I've heard it's just turned into like a mess. It's like 300,000 people.
Beautiful mess.
Yeah, a beautiful mess. Well, maybe I should go.
Yeah.
I like air conditioning too much. I don't know if I can be away from that, but
it would be good.
Well, dude, thanks for coming on.
Thanks,
we
Jimmy.
learned a lot. Mr. Jimmy Rex, that's how we find you on social media.
Yeah, that's my
on your
Instagram, or my YouTube is starting to get some real traction. I have a daily video I put out for motivation. It's a 3 to 5 minute video. It's just jimmydaily.com. It's free. I simply do that because I got a lot of value when I had a guy that did it for me back when I was starting in real estate. And so I put out a different 3 to 5 minute video every day on jimmydaily.com. Okay. You can sign up for it. I don't spam it. It's just you literally get a video every morning into your inbox.
That's cool.
And it's my best material. So,
dude, how great is your name for what you do?
Dude, it's pretty good.
Are you grateful for that? I mean, Jimmy Rex. It's just
I didn't realize it as a kid.
solid name.
When I was doing stand up, I got asked all the time if it was a stage name.
Right.
That's when I realized
it almost sounds like too good, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, even when I was thinking about naming my podcast, I had all these different names, and I did a contest, like whoever comes up with the best name wins some jazz tickets. And I got to be honest, like nothing was better than the Jimmy Rex Show. And I'm like, I'm copying the Tim Ferriss Show anyway. I might as well just call it the Jimmy Rex Show.
Oh, it's such a good name. Yeah,
no, I appreciate that.
Perfect. So, well, thanks, brother. We sure appreciate lots of good advice, lots of good energy. I hope people enjoy it. I know they will. I know we have. So,
thanks, Jimmy. Awesome. Thanks, guys.